Raindance Auteur Award goes to Mr. Terry Gilliam. Come up here, Terry.
Better, and now it's all finished.
It's fantastic. There's an awful lot of rust on this. How long has it been around? Now, whose name is on here? Oh, it's mine. He's right. I had no idea. I thought this was going to be an evening of many awards for many deserving people. But not so. So you won't have to sit and listen through a lot of long, boring speeches from a lot of people. Just one. So what can I say? The irony of all of this is, well, number one, first of all, I want to thank Raindance.
Hey, by the way, Terry, when I started the British Independent Film Awards in Raindance all those years ago, there were 3 people that when they saw me in the street would stop and say, well done. There was Ken Loach, Mike Lee, and you.
We were obviously all desperate for backing. Now, the irony of this whole evening is that I have been honored with this award for something I don't believe in any way. The idea of an auteur really irritates me, frankly. When I think about these little French critics, you know, years ago in love with Jerry Lewis movies, and Jerry Lewis was the first one to be deemed to be an auteur, because he wrote, directed, acted, he did everything. He probably did the sets, the food, the dancing, everything. And he was deemed to be an auteur, a man who can take total credit for everything in his work. And that is utter bullshit, frankly. I really am irritated by it. I think because it's certainly not been my luck to be an auteur in that sense. Everything I've done has always been collaborative, as Jonathan is the first to know, because you'll realize that all the best ideas in Brazil are not mine. To me, the joy of filmmaking is working with a lot of other more talented people. And okay, I've got an idea that we start with, but immediately I'm working with somebody else, my co-writer, whoever that might be, Tony Guzoni, of late for many films. And so it's already a double act. And then with each person we bring in a designer, blah, 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 cameraman, Nicola Pecorini, it changes it. And each person brings their own ideas of what the film should be. And that's what's interesting, because having worked on a film for a long time, writing it, it's pretty boring if everybody goes out there and bends to my will and does exactly what I've been thinking about. That is tedious beyond belief. And luckily, I involve myself with people who don't do that, who really contribute to the film. They become the filmmakers as much as I am. Because a film is such, well, those of you who are in it, making them, you know, it's such a weird beast, a film. And from the starting point, it's one thing, but by the time you start working, ideas are flowing in from all sorts of people. And for me, that's the exciting part, because in many cases, I'm bored with my own ideas at a certain point. New ideas are coming in. It's changing the film. It changes the ideas of the film. Sometimes it shifts the whole story of the film. And that's part of the excitement of the whole thing. So for me, I kind of in that middle of the filmmaking part, I enjoy it most because my ego doesn't exist anymore. I am just one of the many hands that are writing this piece. The film is making itself in many, many ways. And by the end, it's done. And the main point, I suppose, what's funny for me, is that I'm the guy who gets to make a lot of the choices of what goes in and what doesn't. Because the ideas are flowing all the time. I try to break down the hierarchy so people aren't frightened to come in and say, Terry, what about doing this? What about doing that? I can say, fuck off, or I can say, great idea. But I'm in a privileged position to be able to do that. But that is what it's about. But it's the combination of all those things. So I'm the guy that, you know, decides what stays in, what doesn't. The film is no longer mine at that point. It involves all of us who were involved. And for me, a film is a thing that's made by a specific group of people at a specific point in time. It exists in no other way. That's it. the idea of going back and reshooting things is verboten as far as I'm concerned. You take the knocks if it doesn't work. But the main thing is I am the guy who gets to choose. So I'm not an auteur, I'm a filter. And the joy of this is now that I'm old and getting to get older if I'm lucky, one day I'll be sitting there with all my grandchildren and they all look up to me with their sweet little eyes, innocent eyes, looking for hope, for belief, something to dream about. And they will ask me, how did you make your films? And I will hold this up and say, all by myself.
Terry Gilliam, just as a man, let's do the hip hip hooray. How about this? Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Just stand here and